Hello. Today I wanted to talk to you about how my Ladybanks roses are doing in the heat of the Sonoran Desert Phoenix summer. It has been a considerably hot summer, and I do want to show you how they look. You may consider getting a Ladybanks as a vine to cover a wall, kind of like I have right here. It is a very full growing, rambling, caney plant. It does take a lot of training, and it does get very full, and it does grow very aggressively. The largest Ladybanks known in existence in the world is actually located in Tombstone, Arizona. So, and they're known for not having thorns. So it may sound very appealing, especially to grow here in the desert, especially since the largest one is here in Arizona. So I do want to show you how they look in the summer, because I don't think they look as good in the summer as maybe you would think, especially since they are relatively thornless. They may appear to be easier to grow or easier to maintain than like a traditional rose vine would be. And I do want to show you how mine are doing. And I'll give you kind of the pros and cons of growing a Ladybanks rose versus a traditional rose vine. So like I said, the Ladybanks is thought to be thornless or relatively thornless, and mine actually is thornless. I don't have to wear gloves to train it or anything. But I remember one time I was at a nursery with one of my friends, and I said, "Oh, the Ladybanks rose is thornless." And they said, "No, it's not." And I said, "Yes, it is." And so to prove my point, I reached out and I grabbed one of the Ladybanks at the nursery, and it definitely had thorns on it, and I bled a little. So some of them do have thorns. So if you're at a nursery looking for a Ladybanks rose, make sure that they don't have thorns on it, because if you have to train the ones with thorns on it, then in my opinion, you might just want to get a regular rose. However, mine is thornless, and at the nursery I was able to verify that it was thornless before I bought it. So that is something I would suggest you do when looking for a Ladybanks rose. And this rose, I actually sat in front of this rose and I played my flute in front of it. It was in front of my distance drums, which is over there, and the Ladybanks was behind me. And in that video, the Ladybanks did look nice and green. It looked nice and full. We have had like a whole month of being in the triple digits, if not in the 110s almost every day. So it does take a toll on the Ladybanks, and I do want to show you that. I also want to show you how aggressive growing they can be, and how even though they don't have thorns, I want to show you how it may even be more difficult to train these than a traditional rose vine. And especially with the monsoon winds coming in, mine tend to I'll just show you. So let me turn the camera around and I'll show you. I have 4 Ladybanks roses, and I'll show you how they're doing here. Okay, so this is one of my Ladybanks roses. You can see this does get some shade during the day, and I think it is much, much appreciated. The others that don't get shade don't look nearly as good as this one, and this one is looking a little rough. You can see here, let me get this part that's getting the most sun. You can see is totally scorched, and it looks like, I don't know, that actually may be dead, and I may have to cut this off. Yep, this is alive, this is dead, that's dead. So you can see they actually don't take the sun as much as you would think that they do, especially for Arizona boasting the largest Ladybanks rose. You would think they would be a little more sun hardy, but they are actually very sun sensitive. So I want to show you that. You can also see this white trellis that I had. This white trellis that I had it trained on has snapped, because this is a very heavy vine, and I am a short, petite lady, and I am always having to mess with re-putting this back onto the wall, and it is very heavy, and it's actually very difficult for me to keep in control and maintain. This does like to grow. I just trimmed this because I had to take the weight off of it so that I could manage it to get it back to its place on the wall after it blew over in the monsoon storm. And this I think is a very difficult climber to maintain, keep in place, and keep looking nice, especially in the summer. Yeah, it's like I said, it gets very heavy, so I trimmed like half of it back, and it is not looking very good. By no means is it going to die, and it will fill out and start looking good once it cools down, but in the summer it does look very scorched, so I wanted to show you that. And here you can see this piece has blown over with some wind that we got last night. And again, this trellis that it was on, it snapped it because it's very heavy, this plant, and the weight of it just kind of snapped. I have 4 and they've all done the same. I think part of it is this trellis was not the most expensive trellis. It was fairly cheap at the Lowe's, and I think it doesn't do well in the heat. You know, the heat kind of doesn't wear well with this type of plastic, or this is wood. That white one is like a cheaper plastic, and over the years it kind of wore down in the sun, and the weight of this plant has just caused it to snap. And so I wanted to show you that, just so that if you are considering buying this, it is a very aggressive grower. It will get very heavy, and you're going to have to be maintaining it a lot. And then if it's in the sun, again, it just looks very, very scorched and worn down. However, when this does fill in and bloom, it looks beautiful. It is much more fuller than my other traditional rose vines. This blooms once a year, and when it blooms, it looks gorgeous. It will fill the entirety of the wall for a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks straight, of just these gorgeous tiny clusters of, this one's a yellow. You can get this in yellow or white, but they fill with these gorgeous clusters of blooms. It is a very nice rose, and again, mine is thorn free, so it does make it easier to train. However, with it being so heavy and aggressive, I do find this probably much, for me, being a short lady, I do find this a lot more intensive for me to try and train and take care of. So this is a traditional rose vine. I actually did a whole video on all of my traditional rose vines, and I just wanted to show you that this has not blown over, and this is much easier for me to manage and maintain on the wall. And it actually looks, to me in person, I don't know what it looks like maybe on camera, but it looks a lot less scorched. Especially this one gets even more sun than that Ladybanks, so I just wanted to show you that for a comparison, in case you were wondering if you should get a traditional rose with the thorns or a Ladybanks without the thorns. This, even though it has thorns, is much easier for me to train because there's a lot less bulk or weight, and it's a lot less aggressive of a rose. This will bloom more. This will actually bloom fairly consistently, whereas the Ladybanks only blooms once a year. Okay, so you can see this mess here on the ground is one of my Ladybanks, and it blew over. It snapped its little trellis right there, snapped it, and is now on the ground. And I am going to wait for the windy season to be over before I decide fully what I want to do with this. I may just trim this back to the ground and see about getting a different trellis back there. But I have had this for, I want to say, a good 5 years, and that trellis had lasted. And finally, you know, due to the I think due to the Arizona heat and the weight of this, see how weighty this plant would be. It finally snapped it. One thing I want to show you up close, right here, you can see how scorched this branch looks. It really doesn't do as well as you would think in the full sun. I actually would recommend, if you have a shady evening spot to put this in. And if you're looking for a vine, I think that the regular rose actually does better in the full sun. You can see here, this is not from it falling over. This is just how hot it got and how sensitive it was to the heat. Again, this is just so heavy and large that I am putting off dealing with it because it is a considerable amount of work for me. So I did want to show you this. And you can see it is, this has got sizable canes on it. These right here, this is pretty thick. This is pretty sturdy and very hard. It's not malleable. And so for me to put this back up is going to be a lot of effort, which is why I'm very much considering cutting it down to the ground and regrowing it out. This one also fell over in the wind. More work. And then you can see this one actually gets pretty much full shade. And you can see this one is looking the greenest and the best. So I really would consider putting this in a shadier spot in your yard if you are going to put it. And again, look at this. This gets really, really thick. And I may just cut this back because this is very hard to deal with. But just wanted to show you that. And how they do in full sun, full heat. Okay, so I hope that you found this video helpful. I will show you what these ladybanks look like when it's not so hot out and they are doing much better, and I get them off the ground or at least trimmed back and looking good. But yes, I do hope that you found this video helpful, and if you did, please do subscribe. Thank you. Bye.